Welcome to another edition of OG Overtime. Totally not a panic room. Alongside Lauren Brownlow, I'm Joe Ovies. I'm in the Smith Center. Brownlow's back in the Go ACC bunker. The joke is, it's said sarcastically now, this game always delivers, right? It always delivers. And for the most part, I thought North Carolina delivered, right? Armando Bacot delivered. Harrison Ingram certainly delivered. Duke didn't. And John Shire after the game, Lauren, was really as pissed as you'll see John Shire. And he kept questioning the compete level of his own team. And I think it was telling that Kyle Filipowski wasn't really discussed. And I feel like that's where a lot of the ire is compared to, with what happened tonight in the Smith Center.
Listen, your predictions came true on a number of levels. And then I have received multiple texts from people that I know that like North Carolina that have talked about how much they cannot stand Kyle Filipowski now. So he has done a real service to this rivalry. You're welcome, ESPN. You're welcome, everyone. But I will say this about Flip, because I have always had a kinship somewhere deep in my heart for players who can't control their face. Because I'm like that. I have a hard time controlling. If I'm upset, it's usually all over my face. It's hard for me to hide that. Flip is similar. And Bryce Johnson, he was at this game. He's another one that was that way. If he was upset, you always knew it because it was written all over his face. Now, I also texted somebody else. I was like, what would Kay have done with Filipowski's facial expressions? I feel like he would have loved it.
Yeah, look, you're right. There's only so much you can read into. But as this game was let's talk about North Carolina specifically. Let's start with North Carolina first. And I'm kind of out of practice here doing these totally not a panic rooms, Brownlow. So let's start with Carolina, and then we'll get to Duke. Let's start with who actually won the game. And I tweeted this out. I know what I'm getting out of North Carolina. Duke is the wild card because we haven't really seen Duke in its totality. There hasn't been a lot of continuity. We were talking about that with Giglio Thursday from the Butcher's Market. You could see where they've got pieces, but just will they consistently put it together? But with North Carolina, I know what I'm getting. And defensively, they put on yet another fantastic defensive show. They made, as much as Duke hung around, I never really felt that Duke was going to be able to get back in this game because twofold. One, defensively, they made Duke work their freaking ass off for everything. I know John Shire was like, hey, man, we dropped 84 points on this team. Right.
Yeah, and they shot well in the second half. Yeah, for sure.
You had to work. They had to work for everything, right? So I thought that was pretty typical of what you expect out of North Carolina. Why defensively people are salivating over what they could potentially do once March arrives. It's the offense that needs to be a little bit more consistent. And if, Harrison Ingram, who clearly has that dog in him, and he's had that dog in him all year, he's very much as Cadeau is an X factor, Harrison Ingram is such a motor for this team. And those 50-50 balls that John Shire was talking about after the game that they weren't winning, well, the guy who was winning them was Harrison Ingram, who I know a lot of North Carolina fans, you and I both know, I know he just got here, but I love that dude based on tonight's game.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's one of those guys that I think has just changed a lot for them in a positive way. His toughness has been contagious. I think we've seen guys that, not the guys that weren't tough before individually, but we've seen a lot of them get we've seen a little more chippiness from Carolina this year than we've been seeing, I feel like, and they don't easily get intimidated. And I think some of that's a product of him and Cormac Ryan as well to some degree too. And they both are just very smart basketball players who know where to be all the time. And they have no issue, putting their body on the line, either of them, to make a play. And I think that they've kind of made that a part of this team's culture. And that's partly why this team is in the position it is. And to your point, I know what you're saying about Duke. You never really thought okay, Carolina's got this under control. Here's the thing though. We have seen a theft. Maybe it wouldn't have been of this magnitude, but that
Not
was
tonight.
Still Carolina had outplayed them that whole game until that however many minutes it was in that Carolina Duke game.
Not tonight. And the reason why I say that, not tonight and not with this group. I've seen enough out of this North Carolina team that when they know they've got control of the game, then they're going to, for the most part, clamp it down. Again, Would they like to have not had 84 points scored on them? Sure, I get that part, but I still think that you have to understand that Duke's got some talent. They still got 20-point performances plus from some key guys, Filipowski included. But if I told you that Kyle Filipowski had the stat line that he had scored 20 some odd points in this game,
Yeah,
would
I
you have
wouldn't have thought
believed me
that.
based on what you
No.
watched? I wouldn't have
Mm-mm.
believed that. He
Well,
was
I might have
struggling
because he
too.
scored a lot towards the end, but yeah, like in the most
Yeah,
for
and
most of the game.
McCain did that thing that, we talk about with Gilio, that there's always going to be a Duke freshman that lights up in a game like this. They're always going to light up for the North Carolina game. That was McCain. To me, the biggest surprise was the yin and the yang of Tyrese Proctor tonight for Duke, where Proctor did a really good job defensively on RJ Davis. And I could see why, given as hot as RJ Davis has been, that you want to take him out of the game. And I thought Proctor did a really good job of that. He just didn't do it on the offensive end of it. And on top of that, while you're focused so much on RJ and you're doubling Armando Bacot, well, that's when you allow Harrison Ingram to thrive. And I do think, too, the other issue that was exposed tonight, for as much as you might like Duke's pieces, you might lament the fact that they haven't had a lot of continuity. You can be optimistic like John Shire was trying to be after the game, where he talks about we're going to get back to work on Monday and there's still half the ACC season to go. There are some matchup limitations or matchup problems, I should say, with this Duke squad. And it gets back to the coaching staff for not getting a big guy out of the portal to complement Kyle Filipowski. Ryan Young, bless him, he's not that dude. I love watching Mark Mitchell play. The dude's got bounce, but he's just not suited for what they need to put next to Filipowski, which is what Derek Lively really was able to do last year and allowed for Filipowski to do what he's able to do. There's almost a little too much finesse in Filipowski's game for a night like tonight, and I thought that was exposed tonight.
Yeah, I think like it's a problem for your team when probably your best player, like your most NBA ready player in Filipowski, is not the guy that you can also rely on to be like your on-court leader. That's how I'll phrase that, because I don't know enough about like the inner workings of that team or whatever, but no one's you can't ask people to take their cue on the court from Filipowski, because if they do, then you have a bunch of dejected dudes walking around. And for Proctor, I do want to defend him some, just because like he had a very tough job and he did it very well. Now, could you make the case that like, is that the best route to go for Duke? I mean, I don't know. Like, should they have just played it as straight up as they could? Obviously, try to help on RJ when you can and try to give him a little more attention. But like, you can't, if you have Proctor out there on an island chasing RJ Davis around for an entire possession and then go ask him to create something on, like, that's just asking too much. You know what I mean? Now, I don't know that they had a lot of other better options. You know, I don't really know that they did, and they certainly, I mean, Filipowski was also struggling defensively. And I think that was a big issue too. We don't talk a lot about his defense as much because he's scoring and they kind of need that. But, you know, Bacot did what he wanted against him. Harrison Ingram, a lot of times taking threes uncontested half the time. So
the other thing tonight, too, about North Carolina and why there's been a change in conversation around the Tar Heels is that they do have depth. And clearly Hubert Davis trusts the depth on this team in a way that he did not trust the depth on last year's team. And you see it paying off for guys like Seth Trimble. As much as I've enjoyed Elliot Cadeau's game, there were times tonight where it wasn't coming easy to him. Seth Trimble comes in and is a spark plug to get things going. And he was basically taking advantage of what Duke was giving him matchup-wise. And I thought Seth Trimble, low-key, had a real big difference-maker part of tonight. But again, that gets back to Hubert Davis pushing the right buttons, Hubert Davis getting these guys to understand what their roles are going to be on a night-in, night-out basis, and them going out there and doing it. We talked about this a little bit in terms of defense. You know, I've seen the word elite thrown around for North Carolina. And yeah, metrics-wise, this is a team that, again, statistically, it's really, really good defensively. But when you watch them play, defense is a want-to factor, which is, again, why I think John Shire was pissed off after this game.
Yeah.
Hubert Davis has them just like, look, guys, go. It sounds simple. It's basic. It's oversimplifying. But it's like, just go do it. Just want it. Go and execute what I want you to do, and then the good things are going to happen. You see it paying off for North Carolina defensively in this game.
I'm still in awe of their defensive turnaround, to be honest with you, because like watching this team back in December, there's no way I would have predicted that this would be the team we'd be seeing now. I just didn't see it. You thought Armando Bacot's going to struggle with mobile big guys and when he gets switched up on guards. But you know what? He got switched off on a guard at the end of the half. He did a much better job than he did in the Georgia Tech. He learned. He didn't go for the fake. He was good. He's improved. You can tell that he's improved in those situations. Like, just everybody's gotten a lot better defensively. And like you said, it's a team thing. Like, I don't know that except for a guy like Trimble, who is legit, like, a very elite athlete. A guy like Jalen Washington has a lot of athletic. Like, Carolina doesn't have a lot of guys that are like super athletically gifted necessarily, but they've got a lot of guys who played a lot of ball and kind of know what they're doing more or less and know how to make plays happen. And that's what they've been doing.
So I pulled up if you're watching on YouTube, I pulled up the box score for tonight's game. And
you don't want to know how far ahead of the broadcast that was. Oh boy.
Oh, was it?
Oh, it was like solid, like 30, 40 seconds of game action. Oh yeah.
Oh, that's the issues with streaming, I guess, in the grand scheme of
things. I like doing that though, because I like to know, like, because it'll timestamp it too. So it's like, ooh, when did that happen? Okay, cool. I can look for that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When you actually look at the team by team breakdown, it felt like there wasn't that much of a difference between these two squads, and that's why Duke was able to hang around. Obviously, when you're going to get 4 more threes, that's going to help you out. And then the other thing that stuck out to me was the 19 points off turnovers. Again, that gets also back to the whole loose ball situation, the 50-50 balls, which you'll hear a lot coming out of the Duke side of things. Again, all that being a difference maker when you see key players for Duke like Filipowski, like Roach, like McCain, scoring in the 20s. I also like the fact, too, I would say, I like the fact that there were no whistles early on in this game. They were just letting them play. I think there was, like, with 7 minutes to go in the first half, there were only 3 fouls called. At some point, I knew that they were going to put the call in from Bristol saying, y'all, we need to play commercials. Like, have you seen our financials? We need every commercial we can get. So let's go. So you started seeing a little bit of that down the line. And then, I think they also had to get some control of things in the second half as well, which is why you saw the fouls. I didn't see the clip. You watched it on TV, but did Roger Ayers really say when he was looking at that monitor when they gave the technical to
he said, I'm about to get something
Davis?
Here.
Is that what he said? He basically like, I'm about to get booed?
No, and I'll say this, to be fair, what the replay they were showing us on the broadcast genuinely did not show any of what they were talking about. So there was a lot of confusion. Like, everybody was like, what are they, like, Bill and them were like, wait, what are they referring to? I assumed there must have been something. Like, Roger has been around a long time, and then they finally show a different angle at the end, and you can kind of see it now. Why they didn't just why they would add that on, considering like there was hooking, there was plenty of hooking going on mutually.
Sure. Sure.
Maybe they decided he did it first. Whatever. Regardless, I was like so confused for a while. So they didn't like explain it well. And maybe in the replay they showed, they did. I don't know. I have no idea what replay they showed in there. Either way, I was initially very confused as to what had happened. Like, I'm like, why?
Okay.
Yeah.
From the YouTube comment. By the way, if you want to leave comments,
that's what
we're going to pull them up. I'm about to get booed really bad. Hook and hold on RJ Davis. Yeah, because again, I'm up here. You obviously can't hear any of that stuff. I'm not watching it on TV. I was going to say, if you're confused watching the replay stuff and the monitor stuff while you're watching television, you can only imagine what it's like trying to figure out what the hell's going on.
And you're like mad and you're invested and like,
and then the other thing too, it's like, again, it's no knock on the Wi-Fi, but Twitter's not exactly functioning correctly.
Yeah.
And again, Twitter is still very, very useful for in-game live tweets and everything else. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Because again, from up here, I thought that it was going to be on Filipowski for coming down on RJ Davis. So it is what it is.
Well, that was friendly fire, as it turned out.
It was friendly fire when they actually put it up on the replay monitors.
That was evident in the first replay, by the way. It was just the hooking situation initially that
gotcha.
Like, yeah.
So from Rob on the YouTube comments, refs should have to answer questions after the game. That is a call that they would have to explain. Yes and no. Yes and no.
Yeah.
There are some semantics. There are some semantics with how you can get to an official after a game. You can ask for a pool report for an official after the game. The problem is the person who's in charge of this is actually the SID. So imagine Steve Kirshner trying to chase down Roger Ayers when he's probably on a bus because he's got to get to some Atlantic 10 game the next night. So it's all wonky in how they go about trying to get answers out of the officials. From Martin on the YouTube comments, is it weird that I'm not that worried about Duke after this loss? No, I don't think that's a weird thing to think, right, Lauren?
I'm not worried. I mean, any problem they have is the same that they had before. You know what I
Right.
mean? So it's fine. Like, it's not like any new issues got exposed here, and Proctor will be fine. I'm not worried about him.
It's interesting. I'm glad you put it that way because we didn't really learn anything new about Duke. Their issues are their issues. And it gets back to what I said at the beginning of this totally not a panic room, that they have problems at the 4 and the 5. And how do you put a combination out there that's going to get the most out of your key players like Kyle Filipowski? They just don't have that. They haven't consistently had that. As somebody who actually will defend Ryan Young and he actually justifies his minutes because he does exactly what John Shire wants him to do.
Yeah.
Like, tonight's a perfect night where they were really squeezing some minutes out of Ryan Young for as long as they could. And I thought they actually got some productive. I mean, I think at one point they cut the lead down early in the first half while Ryan Young was out there just squeezing as much as they could while Ryan Young was basically flailing all over the floor trying to keep up with Armando Bacot. So I think that's ultimately that if I learned anything tonight out of Duke, I was surprised that they didn't look like they had the same, to use a Coach K term, verve as Carolina did for a game that typically you see them come out and have that. I mean, we certainly saw that last year where Duke was able to come out and run the game at their pace. They tried to get it back to their pace early on, but Carolina's just too good tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I almost speaking of K-isms, I almost texted you like spurt after one of the Carolina, like right before the half, and I was like, no, that's going to seem weird if I do that, so I'm not going to do that. I'm gonna do that. Out of context, just like you probably would have gotten it, but still, I'm like, that's pushing boundaries here.
I would have understood. I would have understood. This is from Matthew on Twitter. RJ Davis realizing he has the gravitational pull for Duke defense and not forcing his offense is what gave everyone else the opportunity to shine. Obviously, if Ingram and Bacot don't take advantage, it's a different story. But his patience and savvy open it all up. Yeah, no, I'm in total agreement with what we saw out of RJ Davis tonight. I don't think anything changes for RJ Davis in terms of his ACC Player of the Year status. I know that Virginia is clawing back into contention or clawing their way into NCAA tournament contention, I should say. And Tony Bennett's doing that thing again, taking a group that looked like they didn't really have much and they're finding ways to win. But I still think Hubert Davis is your odds-on ACC Coach of the Year based on, as I mentioned earlier, Lauren, he's just pushing the right buttons right now. I do feel like Hubert Davis is owed a lot of apologies for some of the things that were said last season, right?
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And I was guilty of it too. I criticized certain things because I didn't fully understand them. And I have to give him kudos too for something else. Like they started out each half. I saw there's Brendan Mark's brother Trevor actually tweets out some plays and stuff, some of the more technical stuff that they do. Yeah. Carolina does. And they ran a new play to start each half. One was like a variation on a play they run a lot, but had a little tweak on it. And it's just like, oh, that's really cool. Like it's one that they run a lot. And so Duke thought they were going for one thing and they were able to fool them in that way because they did something else. And it was like, oh, that's neat. Like I love that kind of stuff. And I think like there was one point where on the broadcast, they were saying Cadeau seemed a little like after he fouled on the 3, like he brought him over and was just like calming him down. And I think that's really important because Cadeau, you could tell he gets a little down on himself when he makes mistakes, especially late in games. I wonder if he's still kind of dealing with some of that fallout from, oh gosh, what was that game where he turned it over late? I can't remember it now for some reason. They lost. It was like the last game they had lost before Georgia Tech. Why can't Georgia Tech
I'll have to pull it up on Ken Palm because I'm actually.
But yeah, anyway, he made them Kentucky.
Thank you. Oh, about that. I was actually texting with our friend Nada during the game, and he was like, "Can we get that UConn game again?" I was like, "Why just UConn? I'd like to see North Carolina play Kentucky and UConn again." Now, I mean, I got some reaction to that when I tweeted it out, like, "Why the hell would you want that? UConn's just playing with their food at this point in time." Again, I
think the better time to play them.
I mean, I guess there is that. I mean, the Kentucky game would be a fun game to watch again, right? That would be a fun game to watch. I understand why you might not want to play UConn because that's just suffocating at this point. But what I've seen out of North Carolina so far, from that stretch on, they can. I certainly think they can compete now. It's a completely different team than what we saw in December.
But listen, here's the thing, and I'm not trying to like oversimplify when I say stuff like this, but it's just worth repeating because I think people need reminding sometimes. This is
Hmm.
college basketball. Weird, sh- weird shit happens all the time. Like it just does.
Yeah,
Weird
remember, you can curse
losses.
now, Lauren.
I know. I started to hold it, and then I was like, oh wait, I can do that. Okay.
You can curse now. It's fine.
But it does, like, weird shit happens all the time. Like, teams take losses, they shouldn't. Like, these things just happen in college. Like, 16 seeds beat ones. The equivalent
Yeah.
of that would not happen in any other, including NBA. Like, it just would not happen in like any other sport. It just wouldn't. The equivalent. It just wouldn't happen. And so, like, the thing is, like, should UConn win? Yeah, but like, I don't know.
Yeah, you don't know.
We just don't know. Like Carolina, even that year, even in 22, when Carolina played Baylor in the tournament, even though they were playing well, I don't think anybody going into that game was like, oh, they're primed to beat Baylor. Like everybody was still kind of like, I don't know, man, Baylor's still really good. Like they weren't supposed to win that game. I'm not comparing the like distance between the two. I'm just saying, like, never underestimate like when a team is feeling good about itself and is hot and has like its best players playing well, like they can absolutely go up against whoever. Now, is UConn favored? Like, yeah, duh, of course. Like UConn's playing better.
So it's interesting. It's so James on the YouTube pointing out might not have any dominant teams in college ball, but there are a lot of solid teams out there. Nobody's talking about Virginia at 8-3
We
in
did.
the league.
We're
We
talking about
mentioned
the
it. We talk about the hashtag. Talk about the Who's. We brought it up a little bit earlier. I'm supposed to go on with Matt Norlander of CBS Sports on Monday with him and Stephen Hartzell on the Sirius XM show. And the reason why Matt reached out to me was because I've been on my, college basketball tastemakers don't want you to know that the ACC is actually not as bad as you're making it out to be. But it's not. That's not direct. That's not directed at Matt. But what was interesting is, and we talked about this on Thursday, I think it's worth repeating when we're talking about North Carolina specifically, when we're talking about North Carolina on a national level, can they compete for the Final Four? Can they win a national championship? Could they get past UConn, right? We've had a historic amount of unranked teams beating top 10 teams, not top 25 teams, top 10 teams. Okay. It happens on a pretty routine basis. When North Carolina lost to Georgia Tech, two top 10 teams lost that night to unranked teams because Tennessee lost to South Carolina that night as well. Right. So that is illustrative of a couple of things. People will point out that offensive efficiencies at are an all-time high. Well, when you're running that kind of hot, you're going to have some games that can go either way. The other thing too is there's not that, and this is something that Giglio preaches all the time. There's not that much difference between teams 4 through 84 at this point. We see this in the ACC. We see this across college basketball as well. So if we see everything in front of you, you see that there are upsets from unranked teams all the time. When you see Georgia Tech upsetting North Carolina, but you can also see some other instances as well. It's like it's important to take your focus off your team from time to time and not be so worried.
Or like your own league. That's the other thing. Yeah.
I think college football has kind of warped our brains into thinking that every game is some sort of referendum, win or lose. When there's a little bit more ebb and flow to the nature of a college basketball season. And I do think, to wrap my point here, I do think that you're kind of missing the point if you go back to North Carolina's litmus test being December games against UConn and Kentucky. You're kind of missing the point where this team has developed and how college basketball has been going the rest of the way.
Well, you know what? It's like it's part of the journey for them. I think that UConn
Thank you, Coach K.
Well, I mean, everybody's running their own race too, right? And North Carolina is running its own race. And the race it's running was a race where it had like an unstoppable half-court offense back in December and couldn't defend anyone. And now all of a sudden their half-court offense looks a mess half the time and their defense is like impenetrable. So yeah, they've certainly, but no, they developed, I think you saw it happen kind of gradually, but also come into it this season with it, like just this toughness that was different than what we'd been seeing. You would see it in flashes, and then all of a sudden you saw them like translated over into being able to like finish games out. And that was kind of their off-season, their non-conference journey right?
Mhm.
Like it was kind of like this journey of like, oh, okay, we can play with these teams. We are good enough to win these games. And I think you saw them kind of realize that and start playing like it. And they really, overall, I don't think, haven't really looked back in terms of like finding ways to win these games. It may not always look aesthetically great, but
Yeah.
they're finding ways to win.
From what do we got here? KS and a bunch of letters. UConn and Purdue are definitely a tier above everyone. I'm sorry.
I hear you. I'm not one of these people. I don't like to put too much stock in the NCAA tournament because I think it's stupid to do that. There's a lot of reasons for that. One of them being that it's like a one and out event. Anything can happen on a given night. I recognize all that. That being said, I need them to not lose in the first round before I'm willing to like do. I'm sorry. Like I just every year they get in the tournament and disappoint and fall on their face. Like I need to see more. I need to see more.
It's funny. I do think that tournament results do matter because tournament results are what we have to differentiate from the course of the regular season. Like if you're a tier above everybody else, then yeah, you should be doing stuff like that, right? Unless you're Virginia and you need it to spark a redemption story from going from the first one to lose to a 16 to then winning it all after the fact. From JSW, if only the Heels had Wake's roster.
Oh.
Giglio's never going to let that one down.
Oh, I forgot that he said that. I thought he was joking.
Every time I come to a Carolina game now since that game,
Wake's roster isn't good. Wake has a good roster.
I'll see our friend Adam Smith from Inside Carolina, and Adam will see me. He's like, I still can't get over how you slow blinked Giglio's statement about Wake Forest and North Carolina. I was like, well, I mean that was genuine. He's like, no, I know. So it was funny. I want you to when you were here, when you were at Carolina, what was the student attendance mechanism for a Carolina Duke game back in the day? Was it a lottery? Did you have to line up?
You had to line up to even get like in the race, so to speak, and then seniors got preferential treatment. But my senior year, I actually didn't get risers, but my boyfriend at the time did because he was in grad school and he got grad school risers. So we went that way. But that was the only time I ever got a seat.
But your boyfriend didn't swap tickets with you?
No, we went together. He got two.
Oh, you went together. Okay. So, okay. I thought I meant that to be like you guys ended up being split up, and it's like, damn, some boyfriend.
No, we went together. Seats. Yeah. Damn. Although I wasn't.
Like, I was like,
I'm a senior. I should have gotten them. He's like, oh, yeah, there you go. I'm like, no,
so,
it's fine.
So it's interesting. Because now everything's on the phone and whatnot. And when I pulled up here, the students.
I would have loved that. That would have been swell. I'm not one for the going out early at 5 a.m.
The students were just all wrapped around, right? But I saw some, I don't want to call them complete meltdowns. They were just mild freakouts as they were trying to explain to ushers, like, no, I'm in this zone. I'm supposed to be in this section. Because, for a lot of students, like, this is the night. This is the night for them. So I saw some mild freakouts. But then I also realized that it's just different now. It's, the students are different. Time marches on. They don't bring out the Blues Brothers anymore like they used to back in the day when the marching band would do that. Now I'm really
when I was in school, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, now I'm really dating myself when they bring out the Blues Brothers. Now they do Ski Yee, and the whole building, all the kids are just chanting along. No more swag surf. It's all about the Ski Yee. And I was dying laughing at the dynamics of the Utes, getting into this game and whatnot. And the crowd tonight. That's the thing about the Smith Center. Yeah. The crowd tonight was excellent. Whatever they end up doing next when this building has to be eventually retired, because that's going to be on the docket here soon. It's not going to have the same kind of acoustics like this, because when this building gets going, it can pop. And that was a lot of fun in the first half, because when they weren't calling any fouls, when they were just letting them play, I mean, this building just kept getting more and more. And I think Mark Yarborough, who does radio out in Charlotte, was like, I didn't realize this game was drinking straight jet fuel to start the game. And that's how it felt in the building.
Honestly, it was a little much for me by the end. I was a little bit like, I need to take a knee. I'm a little, like, even John Shire was literally like, please foul. Please. Stop we need a break. Please, someone foul. Like, even Shire by the end was like, this madness must stop. Like,
this is too much. This is too much.
I don't know, maybe they were trying, and maybe the refs were like, no, we're flowing now. I was like, aren't y'all tired? Jesus.
Apparently not. Apparently not. All right, you got any?
Ask the refs sometime how many times they've called a foul because they're tired and it's close to the official time. Like, just like, of course they've done that.
My knees are just not what they used to be. I got to slow things down. I need a breather. I'm thirsty.
Oh, you know what? That looks like a handshake
right here.
That'll take us to the official. Oh, that's weird. I didn't even see the time.
Huh. Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought? Any closing thoughts before we wrap up this totally not a panic room?
I mean, look, I think it's one of those games. Like for me, I was looking to see like how close are these teams. I don't know. Like it's like you and Julio have even said, like, is the separation that huge between like most of the teams in college basketball? No, but like has Carolina put itself on a bit of a different tier? I think yeah. And this is kind of that's what I was kind of eager to see, was like how close are they? And right now, I don't know. Like Duke still has, like, they can get there, and they got Carolina at home to end the year, and that's big.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so let's, like, Duke. I mean, do I still think of Duke as a top 10, top 15 team in the country?
Yeah, absolutely. Duke will be fine.
Do they have some issues that they're going to have to work past? Yes. I mean, clearly. Around Kyle Filipowski is a problem. I don't know if Kyle Filipowski is at 100%. I really don't. I mean, I know a couple games that I've attended. I mean, the kid's coming off of surgery, from off-season surgery. Number one. Number two, a couple games that at least I've seen, he has fallen, grabbed his ankle, tying up his shoe because he's got to get that thing tight again. So, like, I don't know if he's necessarily at 100%. Facial expression.
You know what? That would explain some of the faces too, to be honest. Like if I wasn't feeling very well and like,
maybe not.
Yeah.
As Martin pointed out, Duke fans probably hate his facial expressions more than any opposing fan base at this point in time.
Yeah, it's certainly not what, like, that made me think of Kay really a lot. Like that's really the only thing that's happened so far in the Shire era, I think, that I've really made me really think of Kay and go, oh, I wonder what he thinks of this.
Yeah.
But like, Shire, what choice do you have?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because I had to do this all of last year, and I have to remind myself this year, in that a night like tonight, where Carolina clearly out-toughed, whatever intangible thing you want to say, but for the sake of this conversation, they were clearly tougher than Duke. And that has been a lament from Jon Scheyer a good portion of the season. Even in wins, he has not been happy with the want to on rebounding or the want to defensively. Again, tonight, the 50-50 balls, which he lamented. And I've thought to myself, okay, if this were Coach K, I know what would be said and probably what would happen, right? I think it was after the Pitt loss, right? Not only was that a situation where they ended up coming up short, they got out-toughed, all that stuff by Pitt, and then Blake Hinson jumps on the table and everything else. The way Scheyer said, like, that's unacceptable, like how that game ended, and he apologized to fans. Like Scheyer is mad, but there's almost like a niceness to his being upset. Okay.
At least that we see. Yeah.
Right. From what we see, he does a very good job.
And probably in reality,
being as measured, and I think this is who he is. It's just as measured as he can be, while also showing his disappointment. It's almost, for a guy who's,
it's giving disappointed dad, which is not the worst.
Right. Thank you. Like watching Scheyer sometimes talk about a loss and he's not upset, he's just disappointed. And watching him talk, it's almost like this measured way that I would have to talk to Caleb about him doing something dumb, like he did tonight. But that's another story altogether. So it's like you have to have this conversation with him in a very measured way. But if that doesn't work, and this is going to be what's going to be curious to me going forward. If that doesn't work in the measured way, well, when do you ratchet it up? And I'll be curious to see how Duke responds from tonight's game.
Yeah, and they need Filipowski. So regardless, like they need to get him to. They need the facial conversation needs to be had, I guess, if it hasn't already.
I'm sure that conversation's already happened.
But Coach K talked about that. What are you talking about? Good faces. Who was it? Andre Dawkins literally got benched for like a while because of his face.
Yeah, he did not have a good face.
That's a real thing that happened. I'm not making it up.
Yeah, so and I have to remind myself that's not how Shire operates.
It's
The
not how
same way with
Shire
Hubert
operates. So
Davis.
I'm not saying
Like
he
like
should. I'm just
like the
saying,
Georgia
like,
Tech loss,
yeah,
right? Like the Georgia Tech loss. I think you and I both agree, hey, he probably it would have been, I mean, I know what Roy Williams would have done in that situation down the stretch with 7 seconds to go or whatever it was, and RJ Davis had the ball. I wouldn't have called a timeout. Roy wouldn't have called a timeout.
I think
But
he
Hubert Davis
literally he
did.
has a rule like that. Yeah, yeah,
So Hubert Davis did. I mean, anyway, the point is that we still have a learning curve
for
ourselves in how
sure.
we talk about these teams. And I guess I guess we can close this totally not a panic room on something that
This
kind of
oh
bothered me.
yes. Well, like I wasn't doing that to suggest that like Shire is somehow not doing something that Kay used to
Oh,
do and he
sure,
should be
sure, sure,
doing.
sure, sure,
It
sure.
was just more of a thing of like that was clearly very important to Kay for a reason, and I'm surprised that it's continuing to be an issue. It's really
Yeah,
more of what
yeah.
I'm
And
saying.
I think it's important for Shire too. Again, I think it's just how they're handling it differently.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, for sure.
I guess what I would probably close this game out with this week. It's This is a nuanced conversation, so follow me here. And I know you and I can have this conversation because we've been watching these games and coming to these games for a very long time. Two things can be true at once, right? In that the game itself, they still have enough things going on that you have. I mean, we can sit here and talk about it for 36 minutes, for heaven's sake, right? There's enough that happens within the game, and there's enough repercussions from the result of the game that gives us
Both,
plenty to
yeah,
chew on,
they're
right?
both top 10 teams for the first
Yep,
time since 19, which is a big
yep,
deal.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
But going into the game, I think the lead up has to evolve. The lead up to the game has to evolve. And there was some chatter about this game not having the same kind of sizzle. There was some chatter about this game being lackluster because of the state of the ACC, as if you have two top 10 teams. Like what does the ACC have to do with two top 10 teams
Wait, was
playing
that
in this building?
the tastemakers again? Because
No,
like I'm
no, no, no,
sorry,
no,
I
no.
thought
That was national talk. That's national talk, right?
well, National Talk's the one who just doesn't like the ACC already. So wait, now they have top 10 teams playing and it's not
It's
good?
still
I
not.
don't
It's just not the same. It's not the same. Now, the easy
geez.
answer to this, and it's people at this point are making the it always delivers sarcastically, right? I mean, I was listening to Gary Parrish and
I
Matt
thought the games
Norlander.
were really good last year.
Yeah, I mean, Gary Parrish and Matt
Sorry.
Norlander spent more time joking about whether or not this is 8 miles apart than they did the actual game because they were just making fun of the tropes. I get it. The tropes are played out. The tropes are
Right, of course
tired.
they are. Yeah.
It is time to evolve. And if you're tired of it, if you're tired of those tropes, come up with something new. And I think we're still having a hard time getting past the fact that the singular force that keeps this game hot, right? That gives it the sizzle, he's no longer here. Coach K is
Yeah.
no longer walking out on that court. And he drew so much attention, so much outward ire from fans both in this building, in Chapel Hill, and nationally that we're still kind of struggling to like Shire's never going to bring that out of people. Like, it's just never going to happen. He's going to have to coach for 40 years and win 5 national championships or something like that to happen. And that's highly unlikely. If he wins one, it'll be an incredible success at Duke, right? So I think we just have to find a new way to talk about this and accept this chapter of it. I know I had a lot of Carolina fans in my mentions saying, well, it's hard to get up for these games after what had happened with the Coach K final season and the Final Four and everything else. Yeah, if you want to use that
I
as the
mean, I
ultimate
guess that
trump
would be your
card,
peak as a Carolina fan, but like
I
at the
mean,
same
yeah,
time, you
but
shouldn't
it
ever
keeps
want to lose to them still.
right. It keeps going. Like it's going to keep going, and you're going to have to find new ways to tell the story. And I think it's
You're
going to. I
never
think
gonna
it's going
get
to.
that high again, so don't chase it.
No,
Don't
it's not.
chase it. It's,
Yeah,
it's not
I'm with
happening.
you on that. So you're just gonna have to find the small joys in life, that come along with this game. So that
Yeah, like
that
the
that
rest of
that
us peasons.
that sort of
Come
bothered
on.
me. That just sort of bothered me leading into this game. It was like almost like a whining of, oh, this game's just not what it like.
Sometimes
Just
sometimes
stop.
Carolina listen, sometimes Carolina fans say the most first world problems things, at least to fans of other except for Duke, like
Yes.
local like any other fan base is like, you seriously just say that right now? Like, are you really complaining? But you know what? To each
Uh,
it's all relative, isn't it?
yes, you're
I
right.
guess.
You're absolutely right. From Timmy M, I'm so thankful Brownlow has her same background with the ACC sign, taking me back to classic panic rooms. Yes, classic panic rooms because this is not a panic room. It's an
No,
OG
certainly
overtime.
not.
It's certainly not a panic room. Certainly not a panic room. You think people get the joke now, Lauren?
I don't know, maybe. This reminds
That
me of
might
the
be.
time where we said where we wrote as one of our panic room video titles, like, do not click this, it's about Zion or whatever it was, and people still clicked it a bunch. Trying to prove a point.
Yes, yes. I do remember that was actually one of our most watched.
I
Right
know
after we
that.
told people
Yes.
don't because we're talking Zion. You're sick of Zion. No, we're not going to do it. So
I'm
we'll just keep this
surprised.
going. But yeah, no, it's totally not a panic room. Just want to let you know, totally not a panic room. No, I'm keeping this joke going because I don't think people got the jerk the first time. So, and you know me,
Including me.
if I, yeah, no, we had to have this conversation. You know me, I will beat a joke into the ground. So I'm going to keep on doing it, Lauren. Keep on
Fine.
doing it.
It's
All
fine.
right, that's going to wrap it up. Wow, we're at 40 minutes. Dang. All
Whoa.
right. See, if this were a panic room, it would have been 5 minutes on a GoPro. See, totally different. Totally different. Not the same. Not the same. All right. Enjoy your night, everybody. We will be back on Monday with a Ovies and Julio podcast. We'll talk more about this and give you some audio and all that other fun stuff. NC State won tonight. NC State has kind of, after things looked a little dicey, they seem to be riding it. The classic "you just beat Carolina" hangover for the Yellow Jackets at PNC
No,
Arena
it's
today.
just their play. I mean, State's unranked. So State got lucky because they're unranked.
That's a good point. That is a good point. As Joe joked in the Miami game, when you expect the least out of the Wolfpack, they're going to start delivering. All right. We delivered. Not a panic room. We will see you later.